Tor here. Welcome back to some more reviews, and welcome to my review on the, I believe, 2008 film directed by Andrei Iskanov, and that is Philosophy of a Knife. Now, I got this DVD a while ago. If you guys go back and watch some of the update videos I did, collection updates, you guys can see when I first got this. Oh, shit. My bad. I gotta be careful too doing that because these are DVDs. These will get scratched real easily. Like, luckily that didn't. But, yeah. Showing you guys the inside. Kind of a gruesome theme of the artwork here. Right there. And then on the inside is a very infamous scene. If anybody out there has seen Philosophy of a Knife, you guys know what scene that is. That is the white phosphorus scene, which we'll get into that later in the review. And it took me a minute to get through this. I watched part one immediately when I bought it, and it was really heavy. And I bought like 4 other movies with this that deal with the subject matter that's also in this. But I wanted to get this one out of the way because it's the longest one. It clocks in at over 4 hours long. Some people say it's just 4 hours of gore, 4 hours of depravity. A lot of people are kind of wishy-washy with this movie. I mean, for good reasons. This is a film that covers a very real subject in a very graphic way. And depending on how you look at it, you could look at it as exploitation. A lot of people do. They say it glorifies or showcases atrocities, and we'll get into all that stuff in a minute. This is definitely going to be a tough one to cover. But Philosophy of a Knife, this movie, independent film, again, Andrei Iskanov, who's made some movies since then. This is probably, I'm just going to go out on a whim and say this is probably his most problematic movie. This is the one that he went through just a crap ton of stuff to make. And they do have a documentary on here, and I want to check that out because it's like over an hour and 40-something minutes. So you got your 4-hour-long movie, and then you also got an hour and 47-something, around 40-something minutes of just them making the movie and how they made it and interviews. And this DVD is just loaded with stuff. Obviously, I want to shout out Massacre Video for giving us this edition because this movie was very hard to find. This movie, the fact that this exists, I can't hate this movie. I can't, because of what these filmmakers went through to make this with very little money. It's an independent movie, no studio backing them, no wide distribution. This is a very underground film. And they had the world against them. I mean, not only did they have people nowadays that watch it, you know, not a big fan of it. A lot of people say it shouldn't have been made. A lot of people say it's very just offensive. But also, back when they were making it, they had a lot of people working against them. Whether you want to say government or whatever, he was arrested for making this movie, and they were questioning him, like, how did you know this happened? Who told you about... Because they really do replicate scenes in this movie. The whole movie is showing you, and I'm not going to say the whole movie, a good portion of the movie is showing you in graphic detail these experiments that Unit 731 would do. For those that don't know, Unit 731 during World War II was carrying out biological warfare. They were taking people, mainly Chinese, Russian possibly as well. But most of the people, the victims, were Chinese. And they were taking them to these labs and experimenting on them and killing them. It was basically a kill facility. Like, when they were brought there, they knew they were going to kill them. They were just figuring out different ways to kill them. And of course, this is during the time where Japan was invading China, and World War II was just such a... When you look back at this time period, it's so it was such a dark period, and it's a period of time that I don't think we'll ever get back to again, where the war was ingrained in the culture, and it was in movies. I mean, there were so many blockbuster movies back then talking about the war, and you know, I think not long after this, or maybe a little bit before this, before World War II, was when All Quiet on the Western Front came out. Maybe a little bit before or after World War II, I can't remember. But like, I know that's a big one. There's a lot of big cinema movies from back then that were covering the war, World War I, World War II. And all the propaganda, and I don't really think, I don't want to get too political with this, but you look at so many movies and you see that there's not really too many right sides. I mean, obviously, what was going on with the Nazis and Japan was terrible. But watching this, it shows you, oh, no, the U.S. did this stuff too. And oh, no, the Russians did this too. So it's like, sort of shine a light on everyone. Like, obviously, Japan was, at this time, what they were doing was pure evil. Pure evil. And they called, well, one of the fucking sequels is called Laboratory of the Devil. And I think hell is a good description for how this movie depicts Unit 731. It feels hellish. It feels monstrous. It feels evil. And when you're watching this movie, you feel like you can't do nothing to stop what you're seeing. And I will say that even though I won't watch this movie again for a long time, it's a very heavy watch. It's a very long movie, 4 hours. I think it's a necessary movie, and I don't have a problem with that runtime. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people look at this film's runtime and they say, why is it that long? It covers a lot of stuff. And it's a movie, but it's also a documentary. Most of this movie is reenactments of the crimes that would happen in this laboratory. And even though a big chunk of this movie is about the reenactments of the murders and experiments that are done in this unit, this laboratory, there's also a huge chunk of it that is documentary. It's going over the history of the war, what the Japanese were doing, a little bit about the just atrocities that were done at the time, the experiments. They go into a lot of actual war footage and real footage and narration. They interview somebody who was an eyewitness to not really what was going on at the unit, but was going on afterwards and knew about all the inside stuff. And I think that's where the problematic stuff comes in, because they shine a light on everything. It's not just, it's just Japan and Japan and Japan. They get into some stuff too where it's like, well, most of the people that did this stuff got away with it. And Russia and the U.S. kind of let it happen. Again, I'm not trying to make this review political, but it's going to be kind of hard to do that because of the subject matter of this movie. But this will probably be a long review too, by the way, because there's so much to cover in this movie. And that's why I say it's not 4 hours of pointlessness and gore, and people are saying it's worthless. People are saying that it's just exploitation. I disagree. I do disagree. It's not a movie that I can watch too many times or revisit, but this is a very important film. And the fact that they went out there and made this movie and put the amount of time in to make it, took them several years to make this film. The director was arrested and questioned for how he knew about certain details that are in this movie. And so, they put so much they just put so much energy into this film to make it, that for me to just call it pointless gore, exploitation, torture porn stuff is ridiculous. It's not fair, and I disagree with people that say that. And there are movies out there that do that. I'll argue, because some people want to say, well, if it's on celluloid, it's art. I disagree with that. There's films out there like Serbian Film and Mortem. Not a fan of those. There are films out there that are just purely there for trying to shock you and disgust you, and don't have a story and don't have anything to offer, no importance. And if people want to lump this movie into that category, I disagree with them. While I don't love this movie, I can't say I'm a huge fan of it. I don't know if it'd be right to say I'm a huge fan of this movie, man, it's great. It's more one of those things where I appreciate the fact that they had the guts to make a movie like this, because it's very graphic. It's about a subject that really happened, and they based it off of fact as much as possible. And I mean, they did their homework. They went and researched actual papers and documents and interviewed people, and they have inside sources, and they have a guy who they interview throughout this entire movie who gives reports on what actually happened. And he was one of the guys, I believe, one of the prosecutors for the people in charge of Unit 731. And you have so many scenes, so many shocking scenes. And the movie, first of all, is in black and white. I like that touch, because I know all the Men Behind the Sun movies are in color, but I like the black and white touch to this movie. And I don't know if it's like a filter or if they actually went out and got a black and white camera from like the 40s or 50s and shot a movie, and you know, because there is some points where it feels like the sound effects and dialogue is dubbed in there. And I'll be honest, besides the narration, there's no dialogue in this movie. There's text, there's narration, there's interviews, but there's no dialogue. It's just you're seeing these things unfold, these horrific scenes, and graphic, gory detail, and you're seeing them unfold, and it's absolutely shocking. It's absolutely shocking. I think the effects in this movie, a few of them look a bit rubbery. Sometimes the effects don't look the greatest or most realistic. But I mean, this is an independent movie, and I think for some of the scenes, it's haunting shit. It's very graphic. It's very, very, very gory. And there's a lot in this film. I definitely am going to put like a graphic movie warning, whatever I got to put at the beginning of this review. Just be like, hey, this movie is really graphic and messed up. So, and the more haunting thing is, it's just like, you know it's real. You know this is based off of facts. This is them reading files and interviewing people who saw this stuff go down, and they're reenacting it. And I just really appreciate the atmosphere. It's such a dark movie. It's just the black and white look. It adds so much to this film. More than I thought it would. Like, at face value, it's like, oh, it's just, you know, because it's back in the 40s, black and white. It adds a quality to it that makes it even more gritty and even more nasty. And the soundtrack, I think the soundtrack to this movie was wonderful. Wonderfully done music in this film. Different kinds of music, some synthy music in there, which I wasn't too sure about, but it kind of won me over. Just look up the music to this movie. If you think this movie is too heavy for you and you don't want to watch it, look up the soundtrack, at least. The soundtrack is wonderful. It's so well directed for the kind of movie it is. It's a very well shot movie. It's a very well directed movie. I think it nails a lot of the things that a good movie should have. It doesn't really have a story, though. This really isn't a movie that you're watching for a story or characters or dialogue. The most you get in this movie is there's a soldier who's pretty much the main soldier you see throughout most of the movie, who's, I guess you could say, is the main villain. There's one woman prisoner there that he kind of, you don't know if he's fallen in love with her or if he just wants to set her free just to be nice. Like, there's not dialogue there, so you kind of have to imply what's going on. But the most you get as far as the story goes is he sets her free and he realizes that he can't let her go, and so he shoots her. And that scene was shocking. That was like my favorite scene of the movie, just the way that it was done. That was an excellent scene. But besides that, all you're really seeing is reenactments of experiments, people held captive. You're seeing, I mean, there's so many. There's an X-ray scene that I thought was horrifying, because we all can have access to getting an X-ray. Like if you break your arm, you're gonna go get an X-ray scan. But there's a scene in this movie where they overexpose somebody to X-rays. They just do it over and over and over and over again. They keep pushing the button and the X-ray keeps going over and over, and you just see them just start to burn up, and their just skin start to melt and stuff. That was very disturbing. There's a scene with a cockroach, and it ends the movie, and that's like, it's like one shocking way to end your first part to your movie, where they strip a girl down naked. And I probably should offer a graphic warning for this part. I know I already said the last part, but we're going to get into some pretty disgusting, disturbing details here. So if you're squeamish and don't like gore and don't want to hear about it, skip ahead. I'm going to try and give a timestamp where I get out of the gory details. We'll see. But I'm just going to let you guys know out there that are squeamish and are wondering about spoilers. I am going to be spoiling this movie. There's not much you can spoil about it. It's just about war atrocities. That's the movie, war atrocities. But if you don't want to hear graphic, gory details, this probably isn't the review for you. So, because I don't even know if I'm going to offer a timestamp, because the whole movie is just graphic. Like, there's no getting out of it, basically. So, you've been warned. But the cockroach scene was very disgusting and disturbing and haunting and creepy and pure evil, where they strip a girl down naked and they take a cockroach and they stick it in her privates. And in the next part of the movie, part 2, you see the cockroach crawl under her skin, and they find it and they fillet her. They just take her skin off. They just cut her skin, fillet her skin off, and they find the cockroach and they play with it. That shit was like just mind-blowingly disturbing. I was just like haunted by that scene. Another scene that was really haunting was the freezing experiments, where they have a guy go outside and it's cold winter. They strip him naked, they tie him to a pole, and they dump this water all over him. And the person's narrating, saying what's going on, what are they doing. And they bring the guy back inside and they put his flesh in this pot of boiling hot water. And then they cut little cuts on his skin, on his legs and everything, and they have him walk out in the hallway. And as he's walking, the flesh and everything just falls off his arms and his legs, but he can't feel it. So he's just walking. Like, he keeps walking and you just see the flesh fall off. And bones, like literally bones is all that's left. And his legs become bones and he's walking and he just sort of falls. He just crumbles because it's just bones, nothing to hold him up. That shit was like, there's so many scenes like that in this movie where it's just, and yeah, the makeup effects you could say don't look 100% realistic, but it's just the ideas of what they do in this movie, this unit did, is pure evil and unspeakable. And for the fact that they made this movie and did that, because it's just showing you what really happened. This is reenactments, and it's showing you, because it was kept secret for a while. Hell, I don't even think Japan admitted to this stuff until like 2002. And this stuff was being done back in the mid-30s to the sort of mid-40s. So, a lot of people involved with these experiments. It goes into that too, people committing suicide afterwards. The plant, they basically murdered everyone. When America won the war, essentially, and was invading Japan to try and figure out what was going on, when Japan realized they lost, they just went through the unit and killed everyone. They killed everyone. They burned the place down. They burned all the documents. A lot of them committed suicide, except for some of the main people behind it. They talk about the court and Russia. I think Russia prosecuted these people. Some people also were prosecuted by the U.S., But they all got away with it. Some of them got charged, but most of them got away with it for providing information. And the guy that they interviewed in this movie was talking about how the trial was, it was simple, and they got through it, and they were able to sort of cheat the system. And how they were put in these camps, and, you know, how the irony of how they were treating people in these labs, the barbaric nature of it for science, whatever they were trying to say. And then how when these guys were arrested, they sort of got a, not like lavish treatment, but the easy way out, basically. And all the U.S. did, according to this documentary, was say, hey, you tell us how you did this, you give us your documents. Because of what happened, Japan got way ahead with medicine and stuff like that. Because instead of experimenting on monkeys and gerbils and animals, they had humans to experiment on. And they were infecting people with the bubonic plague, and they were doing pressure chamber experiments. I didn't even get into that one. That one's a pure fucking nightmare fuel. That was the one scene from this movie I knew about because it's the most infamous scene, is the pressure chamber, where they would put somebody in a pressure chamber and they turn it up slowly, and the more it would go, your insides would just, like, out of any orifice, your guts would just spew out of. So, like, you know, if there's an orifice, that's where your guts are coming from. And your eyeballs would pop out, and there's a point in the movie, or a point in that scene, where you see the brain explode. So they turn the pressure up real slowly until the person's bleeding and dying and bloating up. Then they decrease it real fast, and the movie, it just liquefies someone. It's haunting the way they did it, and that's the best scene of the movie as far as the effects go. That scene just left me like this, like I was speechless after that scene. It is a horrible thing that's a horrible thing that happened, and it's a horrifying thing to witness in this movie. And the effects are well done, and it's a very, very, very messed up scene. But they would give people bubonic plague, they would rape people, and then when the babies were born, they would kill the babies and experiment on the babies. They would have people get STDs and purposely infect the women and study that. And so a lot of what they were doing, unfortunately, advanced them in science. And America and Russia were kind of like wondering, okay, where's the info? We want info. Because we can't do some shit like that. But you guys did, and we want info. You give us info, then you guys are pretty much scot-free. And it's really fucked up when you find that out, because just hundreds of thousands of people were killed in these labs. And the U.S. and possibly Russia, I know the U.S. pretty much gave them immunity because of the info that they would give them about medicine and procedures and, you know, all the evidence and all the information they had on the experiments. So it's not a happy ending of the story. It ain't like these guys rotted in jail forever and ever. They got away scot-free for what they did. Most of them did. Some of them did get arrested and put in prisons and stuff, but they didn't serve much time. I think most of them served like maybe 20 years for what they did. And I'm not even telling you guys everything. I mean, this movie is 4 hours long, so it goes on and on and on. It shows you different things they do. The one thing they didn't get into at this movie, but I heard they do it in the Men Behind the Sun movies, is the landmine fields, where they would have a bunch of people to get together and run, and pretty much like Rambo 4, where they're running in the fields and then people are blowing up. That happened back in the day too, but they didn't show that much in this movie. I don't think they showed it at all, but I know that was a big thing. And just, yeah, you're just, the documentary parts are very interesting and informative. They showing just footage and interviews and going over certain things that were happening at that time. So it serves as, I think, a good way to look back at these crimes and see how horrific they are, and see that, like, those people out there that say humans can't do that stuff. We're complicated. We're sophisticated. You know, we're governments and systems, and there's no way barbaric things can happen. Go back to this time. Systematic murder. These people treated the Chinese and other captives as logs. They called them logs. They were not human beings to them. They were just basically giant animals to experiment on. And this was done by the government, funded by the government, and was celebrated, and at the time was looked at as an achievement of science. And it's really dark, messed up, fucked up, but I was very curious to learn about this Unit 731 and what happened back then. And I mean, if you're curious about the crimes and everything, I mean, the documentary parts will fill you in on all the info you need, and the reenactments are just, they're horrifying. They're dark. They're despicable. What happened to these people? What happened to these people was pure evil. And even though the movie is very, very dark, it goes into a lot of very, very dark places, pretty much just dark the whole time. The ending, they show the memorial for all the people that have passed away during the war, the invasion of Japan into China. And that was a good shot at the end of the movie, seeing the shrine, this sort of area they made this memorial for all the people that had passed away. And yeah, Philosophy of a Knife, I know is a bit of a longer review, but for what this movie is it upsetting? Yes. Is it offensive? Debatably, yes. Is it dark and depressing and evil? Yes, but it shows you what really happened. It shows you what happened, and it's an unflinching look at the evils that were committed at Unit 731. And I can't hate this movie. Again, I'm not gonna walk around here and be like, yeah, go see it, I recommend it for everyone. No, it's not for everyone. It's not for the squeamish. It's not for the weak at heart. It's not for everyone, man. It's a very tough watch. But if you're curious about this time period and about this event in history, because there's a quote in Men Behind the Sun, that movie opens with a quote that says, "Friendship is friendship, history is history," I think, is how that movie opens. And that's just a great quote to open that movie to. Friendship is friendship, history is history. And this just shows what happened this time in history. And yeah, I think it's a very, very, very well made movie. I'm gonna give it 3.5 out of 5. I would give like a 4, but again, it's just, I feel like giving it a 4 out of 5 is like, yeah, 4 out of 5, go see it. I'm gonna give it a 3.5 out of 5. Maybe one day it'll bump up to a 4, but I can't revisit it too often. I can't see myself going back to it all the time. But it's an interesting watch. It's very well made. The gore looks, for the most part, effective. If I had any little nitpicks, the dubbing of the sound effects, they put a lot of sound effects in there that you can get from like freesound.com, where it's just, you know, generic screams, and you hear the same, like when they're opening people up and digging the insides out and stuff like that, or if they're cutting somebody, they reuse the same sound effects over and over and over and over and over again, so it gets kind of annoying. So I kind of wonder if they actually went out and shot this movie as like maybe a silent film, and they had to dub all the sound in later. But I thought that, if, you know, that was probably my main complaint. The other one is the green screen. You can tell sometimes when they're in the lab that there's a green screen behind them, or some of the CGI enhancements. But this is an independent movie that's 4 hours long that covers the war atrocities committed by Japan and Unit 731. And it goes for a long time, but it just, It doesn't really get boring to me. I know some people would maybe find it boring, but I found it to be interesting with the documentary parts, hearing the history, and then when they show the graphic scenes of murder, it's horrifying. It's got a horror film quality to it. It's terrifying movie to watch. And there's certain scenes that are just kind of like they'll stay with you for a while. Certain scenes will stay with you for a while. So I know it's kind of a heavy one, but I need to talk about it. I think it's an important film to talk about. I think more people should give it a watch. I'm not gonna be like everyone, but I think more people should check out Philosophy of a Knife. And I'm glad that Massacre Video released this DVD, gave it more wide distribution, because for a while it was out of print and hard to find. But yeah, it's an important movie. It deserves to exist. It's not just pointless gore. It's not mindless. It has a purpose, and it's history. So it happened, and the movie exists to show you what happened. But anyways, y'all, that's gonna do it for my review of Philosophy of a Knife. 3.5 out of 5 for me. Pretty well made movie. It's a dark one though, very dark. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching my review. Take care. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys on the next review. The Explorer of Horror is out. Peace.